Hello everybody, MegaZardX here, back at it again to give y'all another very exciting video. And for today, we're roughly about a couple or a few months into the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2. And obviously at this point now, we have games such as Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza. And a lot of people were kind of thinking and contemplating, like, should those games probably have been flipped backwards or around and saying, hey, we should have had Donkey Kong Bonanza at launch and maybe Mario Kart should have came later though. But then some other people probably not. Businessly speaking, we know how many copies Mario Kart 8 Deluxe had managed to sell. So it kind of makes sense for Nintendo to put that one out the gate because that game's just going to continue to sell throughout the lifespan of the Switch 2. So it just kind of made me think and wonder and ponder, like, what were the rest of the launch games that we managed to get, or at least on day one, for all the other past Nintendo systems, everything from the NES all the way up to the Nintendo Switch. So in today's video, I just want to go back and just reflect on and just look at all these other past games that we managed to get launched with those respective systems, and then figure out, exactly like what might have been like the top few that I personally will rate as probably the best launch games that there might have been, at least on day one for all of these systems though. So let's go ahead and jump up in this mess though. But if you hadn't already done so, make sure you're going to hit that like button, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight up into this video. Alright, so let's first go ahead and look back and rewind the clock all the way back to like the late 80s or whatever though, all the way spanning back to the Nintendo Entertainment System, or I like to always say is the NES though, because out of everything on this list, if you're just going about sheer numbers, this one blows it out of the park, or at least with the NES though, because this game console managed to launch with at least 17 different games. Now, granted, yes, not all of them were first-party games. I think 2 of them were technically third parties, or, at the time, there was a lot of arcade games trying to come over to the home console scene. So I think 2 of them technically were third parties, so we'll set them aside. But even if you set those 2 aside, you still got like 15 other games that were all made by Nintendo in some kind of way, and they all were available on launch. So this is crazy to look at it, though. Crazy to think about it, but let's just go ahead and look at all the games. So you had a whole bunch of different sports games, and then a few of the more renowned games that are really good quality games that people still play even up to this day though. So you had baseball, Cuckoo Land, Duck Hunt, Excitebike, golf, Hogan's Alley, Ice Climber, pinball, soccer, Super Mario Brothers, tennis, Wild Gunman, Wrecking Crew, Gyromite, and Stack Up. Those are all the games that they managed to drop out. So obviously the well-known or classic beloved ones, like even some that we saw in that NES World Championship game that they put out on the Switch not too long ago though, those games being like Excitebike, Ice Climbers, New Super Mario Brothers, those are the well-known and beloved NES games and stuff like that though. A little shout out to Wrecking Crew, it's not a bad game either though. But yeah, I had to do a little bit of digging up on this mess and figure out what was Gyromite and Stack Up, because I heard a lot of those other games though, but those 2, I was trying to remember, I was like, what were those 2 games? No, those were the ones that were built around that Rob toy, Rob and Super Smash Brothers. Yeah, like, it's kind of crazy. Look up some little videos and stuff of people playing that game though, because it's crazy to think that robot can actually play those 2 games though. Kind of makes me want to go back and get that robot for a nostalgia state. Like, I got the NES, I mean, it'd be kind of cool just to mess around with that thing or whatever though. But yeah, just in terms of a sheer quantity of games, like just to have 15 first-party games available on day one, something that you'll never see again from not even just Nintendo, Sony or PlayStation as well though. Like that's just completely unheard of and stuff like that though. But if you were to get all these games, which I don't know, I mean, inflation and stuff was a little bit different back in those times though. I imagine it'd be expensive to get all these games though. But a lot of people, I think, probably started off playing this game or system with New Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, because even on my NES I had back there, the one that my dad basically originally owned, he actually managed to have like that 2-for-1. Like, I think they technically sold those copies of those games separately, but then I think a little bit later on they put them both as like a 2-on-1 cartridge. Like, yeah, that's what I kind of grew up on, and New Super Mario Bros. Was like one of those first games I managed to have. I had that orange zap gun with me as well though, just shooting down all those different ducks though. But yeah, overall, that's not a bad spread of NES games that you're able to have on day one. So it's not, I mean, in terms of this launch day, of all the stuff that you can play, this is up there in terms of like just a sheer variety of different games though, between all those different sports, good quality games and stuff like that though. NES already kind of hitting hard right out the gate. All right, next on the list we have the Super Nintendo. Now everything from this point forward, either there's going to be like 3 games, which that's going to be with this console, or 2 games. That's just how it is moving from this point forward. You ain't going to see nothing like the NES anymore though. But if we were going to go ahead and look at the Super Nintendo games, it is as follows. We have Super Mario World, F-Zero, and Pilot Wings. Now, out of those 3 games, I think the most time I put into either one of those is obviously Super Mario World and the original F-Zero. I really hadn't messed around too much with the Pilot Wings series, for better or for worse. I mean, I know they put out a game like that on the 3DS as well. I mean, it all started here on the Super Nintendo though, but I don't know. Flying games, or at least in that kind of nature, they really kind of didn't suit my fancy though. So I'm really looking at F-Zero and Super Mario World. F-Zero, you know what? I mean, the series got really good, I think, moving from this point of this game afterward though, but at least with this one, I mean, it's not the best F-Zero game. It is a classic one and stuff. I mean, they built off of this nostalgia bait and stuff like that, even with racing games that we have nowadays with F-Zero 99 and stuff like that. That game is absolutely phenomenal though, but the original one, it's just a classic good racing game. It wasn't like your Mario Kart, I mean, because Mario Kart wasn't even a thing at this point. It didn't come until later on into the Super Nintendo life, and then, you know, it's on to the races after that though. But yeah, overall, I mean, to have a racing game on day one, that's pretty good, and that's not necessarily bad. But all eyes were really on Super Mario World when that came out, and gosh, that's like still one of my most favorite 2D Mario games, even up until this day. Like that classic theme though, I mean, shoot. I mean, if you were getting a Super Nintendo, you were getting Super Mario World. Like there just wasn't no beating around the bush on that one though, because I mean, between all those unlockable levels, all those different secrets, tidbits and stuff, the P-switches, like there was just a lot of time that you can put up into this game, and it was just a timeless classic, at least for the time though. So overall, not bad for the Super Nintendo in terms of launch games right there. Major shout outs to Super Mario World on that list though, but you know, not too bad. Let's just go ahead and speed the clock up just a little bit though. Let's go ahead and go over to like the late 90s in 1996, my birth year right there though, with the Nintendo 64. We only had 2 games, and from this point forward, every console only came out with 2 first-party games right out the launch though. Super Mario 64, as well as Pilot Wings 64. Pilot Wings managed to come back. Still, once again, I hadn't put any time into Pilot Wings as a series whatsoever. I probably need to retcon that at some point, at least dive up in it a little bit though. But Mario 64 though, man, that could be a whole video in and of itself though. That's still, to this day, one of my favorite, best all-time games, period, point blank. I put so much time into that series. Can't say how many times I've tried to restart, play, and beat that game over and over and over again. And you just have to think, if you were there during the times going from them 2D Marios from the NES one, Super Mario Brothers 2 Game of the Year edition, baby, Super Mario Brothers 3 and Super Mario World, all those games were just 2D. And a lot of people at the time couldn't even think or fathom to have a game represented in 3D until that game came out, and it just blew people out of the water. I mean, swinging Bowser around by his tail, chunking him into bombs and stuff like that, racing around, racing against those Koopas and such, and then finding all 120 of those stars though. Like, that's just a timeless classic, and people still play that game even up until this day. I know some people don't vibe with it, maybe some more modern audiences that just can't deal with the camera controls and stuff like that. I know the camera ain't necessarily the best, but if you grew up on this game, you just know how to work with that camera though. So yeah, Nintendo 64, I mean, you only had a couple of games though, but that Mario 64, that kept you busy for a long time, just saying though. All right, now let's go ahead and look at the next console. The Nintendo GameCube over here came out with a couple of games, Luigi's Mansion and Wave Race Blue Storm. I remember playing the previous Wave Race on the Nintendo 64, and I did manage to pick up Wave Race Blue Storm when I was going through and doing all my GameCube collecting, because I never grew up owning a GameCube. Like, I had the 64, I had the NES, I skipped the Super Nintendo, I skipped the GameCube, unfortunately though. I went back and retconned that, thankfully though, but at the time I just didn't though. Now, Wave Race Blue Storm, that's a really solid game. Hey, if you're talking about water physics, man, that game has it and then some. It was great on the 64, even better here on the GameCube. I honestly don't understand why we don't have a new Wave Race even available on the Switch, or hopefully moving forward into the Nintendo Switch 2, but hopefully Nintendo manages to go through and look at that series like, we could do something with it though. But yeah, a cool racing game, and not just, just a general racing game like a F-Zero or Mario Kart. The fact that you're able to kind of race on water, that's really cool. And then Luigi's Mansion. I know this wasn't necessarily the game that people were expecting the GameCube to come out and release with. They were probably expecting the game like Super Mario Sunshine, even though that game wasn't, not necessarily too great. Environments were great, but I'm just saying though. But Luigi's Mansion, for it to be the first spin-off for Luigi and his own series, which then managed to get, Luigi's Mansion 2, Luigi's Mansion 3. I imagine on Switch 2 we'll probably have a Luigi's Mansion 4. I mean, the game just kept selling better as each game came out though. I mean, this game is incredible. Like the stuff you're able to do with this thing, and the whole twist on hunting ghosts and stuff. You have Professor Egad over here supporting Luigi and stuff. I know it's not the game that everybody expected. Like nowadays we expect Mario, traditional Mario games like a 3D or could be a 2D, starting out the gate, or a Zelda game. Luigi, I'm glad he managed to get a little bit of the spotlight right there. Managed to come out the gate like that. So it's not bad in terms of GameCube ones. I feel like between those two, you can keep you fairly busy, at least at launch. Then let's go ahead and look over at the Wii. The Wii, you had two different games. You had Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, as well as Wii Sports. Let's just go ahead and talk about Twilight Princess though, because this one was a highly anticipated game, especially coming off of the heels of Wind Waker that we managed to get on the GameCube. People were kind of expecting a more mature rated game, or at least in terms of the look and feel, because I mean, at the time you had like the PS2, the Xbox was coming out on the scene and stuff like that. I mean, you have these more mature related consoles and stuff like that. So Twilight Princess was that game that everybody was kind of wanting and expecting, and it came out on the Wii originally first, and then I think about a week later, then it came out on the Nintendo GameCube though. So yeah, you had two different versions though, but the Wii was technically the very first version that was readily available for people to play. And then obviously you're going around holding the Wii remote, hacking and slashing, but if you didn't like the motion controls, you could have got the GameCube version though. Me, in my experience with Twilight Princess, I never played the Wii or even the GameCube version of it. It wasn't until way later, until the Wii U remaster version. That's when I managed to go through and play through Twilight Princess. Overall, the game is really cool, had some really interesting things about it. It's not necessarily one of my most favorite Zelda games though, but it is a Zelda game nonetheless though, and it's a pretty solid one. So in terms of having a big major single player right out the gate, you had that. And then on the flip side, you have Wii Sports. This could be a whole video in and of itself right here though, because Wii Sports, for all sakes and purposes, yes, online wasn't too much of a thing. I mean, granted, yes, actually, GameCube technically incorporated online first, like with games such as like Phantasy Star Online and stuff, but it wasn't like really steadily mainline until like the Wii with, the Wi-Fi connection and all of that though. But this game, it didn't have where you're able to play with people online, but you're able to play with people in person. And the Wii, I felt like that was a console that you had and everybody else and their mama had. Like I remember both of my cousins' families, they had Wii, so then when we were going over to other people's houses, they also had Wii Sports as well. That was a common game that obviously it was bundled in with the Wii, so everybody and their mama that owned the Wii had that game, and that game was highly competitive. Like I can't tell you how competitive we were with bowling and tennis. Like those were the two hot items and stuff. I mean, yes, we had some a serious camp of people that were really duking it out within the boxing game as well though. Man, you were swinging punches left and right with a Wii Remote nunchuk though. But yeah, that game was phenomenal because it was just a quick, easy, sociable game that it really wasn't really complicated. Everybody knew how to bowl, basically just an IRL, and everybody knew the premise of tennis. So being able to do the motion controls and play like that was just endless hours up on that mess though. And I can't say how much time I put into that, just trying to get to the pro levels and trying to fight off the CPUs. But then every now and then when the family wanted to play, I mean, you gather up the crew and you manage to duke it out though. So yeah, the Wii, that's a really good launch right there, because those games definitely held it up for a really long time. Then let's go ahead and spin it over to the Nintendo Wii U. Obviously this one isn't necessarily as good, unfortunately though. I mean, because we all know the Wii U barely managed to sell in the teens of millions of consoles. It wasn't a really hot item for Nintendo, unfortunately though. But whenever we looked at it for this one, hey, you had Nintendo Land and you had Super Mario Brothers U. And I was like, okay, Nintendo Land, I really loved the heck out of that mess. It did well, at least with my family dynamic, because I had 5 people, 2 siblings, 2 parents. And that was the first time we were able to actually incorporate 5 playable characters at one time. One person holding the gamepad, 4 other people holding the Wii remote, or sometimes nunchucks or whatever though. And that really worked for me, and I put a lot of hours into that. But if you happen to be somebody that just happens to be by themselves, I mean, yeah, they had some single player campaigns and stuff like that, like the Donkey Kong one where you navigate like this little puzzle like area or something like that, or the Game & Watch Inspire one. Like, you had a few different challenges out there like that. Metroid, you could solo that in the ship or as the combatant itself though. But I mean, overall, it wasn't necessarily a bad one. Better if you had more people around you. Then you had New Super Mario Bros. U. And, for a lot of people, that was going to be like one of the must-play games if you were going to have it on the Wii U. At that time, I know the New Super Mario Bros. Formula was getting a little bit stale. This is the last one after New Super Mario Bros. On the DS. And then you had Wii on the Wii. Then you had New Super Mario Bros. 2 on the 3DS, and then this one being New Super Mario Bros. U on the Wii U. It kind of got stale a little bit, but at least at the time, that was like Nintendo's first HD console right there. So you got to see New Super Mario Bros. In HD. So it wasn't too bad, but I don't know. It was all right. It was all right. And then we get over here to the Nintendo Switch, the most recent thing, with Breath of the Wild and 1-2 Switch. 1-2 Switch, let's just get that out of the room. That game wasn't necessarily really great whatsoever. I'm sorry though. It might have been fun for a few times if you got like a little party social gathering or whatever. It might have been okay for maybe the first hour, but all the consensus I got from a lot of people, it wasn't necessarily a game that I own. I mean, it was just kind of like almost like a nothing burger. It was like you get a little bit of enjoyment out of it, but you probably weren't picking that game up a lot though. One of the few games I think they actually use that IR sensor on the back of the Joy-Con though. But the more impressive game was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. This one right here is another game where I feel like, hey, you could probably I could spend a whole entire video just talking about this game in and of itself though. Breath of the Wild was phenomenal. That was the game that blew off the lid off a conventional Zelda, for better or for worse. I know some people miss their traditional Zelda games and stuff like that, but I mean, the fact that you're able to go through this whole game and just do whatever you want in whatever order you want. You can challenge the boss, the final boss, at the word go as soon as you get off the Great Plateau. There was so much that you can do, so much that you can explore, so much that you can experiment around with. That game occupied the whole entire first month. Like when it came out March 3rd of 2017, I was doing nothing but playing that game until Mario Kart 8 Deluxe happened to come out on the scene. And then I went back and started racing again though. But that is a game right there that literally held up the whole entire Switch launch right there. So many different amazing clips that you're able to see people share it on Twitter though. I mean, it was just a phenomenal game. Then that leads us to where we're currently at right now, where we had the launch of the Switch 2, and it came out with 2 different things. You have Welcome Tour and Mario Kart World. Surprising that this is the first console ever that actually launched with a Mario Kart game, considering how on every one of these past systems, whether it be home console or even portables, I didn't have the time in this video to talk about the portable games. It's just mostly the home console games though. I mean, Mario Kart games had managed to have been the highest seller right up there with usually what would be the Pokemon games. And the fact that this game came out, people were ecstatic through the moon, such as people like myself, because we've been playing Mario Kart 8 for the better part of over a decade, and we've been waiting for a really long time. Turns out that they were trying to make this game for the Nintendo Switch, but the limitations in terms of the hardware and stuff, that's the reason why the can got kicked down the road multiple times to where we're currently at with the Switch 2. And man, this game is really good. I think it's a smart move to have it as a launch game. Granted, if you're not much of a racing fan, or you do everything, you get done, and you're not one of those people that's just going to try to perfect your speed trials, or someone that's just going to constantly get online and play it, because that's kind of where I'm at right now in the game. Once you unlock everything, the aesthetics, the costumes, and all of that, you're just supposed to hop in, get in and out, and race online though. I mean, then it kind of feels like, well, you ain't really got much more to do. And in the second game with Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, I mean, that doesn't really go to add anything too much to it. I mean, yeah, that game is a digital only game. That kind of helps it a little bit because it's not like a full, retail release. But at the same point, I mean, there's not like a lot that's kind of offer up in there. that feels like an actual gaming experience. I feel like it's more not necessarily built for the enthusiasts, but it's kind of meant for people that are just kind of, you know, just kind of curious about it. And honestly, this should have been included free within the Nintendo Switch 2, kind of like how Wii Sports was just included for free. Shoot, they could have sold that game by itself, and it probably still would have sold gangbusters. But Reggie did us a solid right there in convincing them to include that up in there, though. Nintendo, kind of, for better or for worse, is kind of against the idea of giving away too many free games like that, though. But regardless, it's an okay experience from what I've been seeing online, though. But obviously, the big one within this one is like similar with the Switch, with 1-2 Switch and Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild being the big one. Mario Kart World is the bigger of the two with the Switch 2 game. So yeah, that's basically all of the different Nintendo home consoles and all the respective launch day games that we had that were first party games. So now looking at everything, if I were to pick a top three, not in, you know, like ranking 3, ranking 2, ranking 1, but if I were just to choose 3 systems that had really great kickstarts off, I would say the Nintendo Switch. Obviously, I think that was great because you had Breath of the Wild. That was endless hours. I think you also did really well with the Super Nintendo because of the fact you had Mario Kart World, F-Zero, and stuff like that. Now, the only one on the list outside of the NES that had like, gosh, 15 or whatever though. And I would say the N64, I think, was also another good one. But also the Wii was good too. Dang. I think almost every one of the, including the NES, at the time, it was still good too. The only ones I felt like that were just like bad ones that didn't really have like too much to offer, I think it was kind of the Wii U. And surprisingly, I think the Switch 2 was the lower one on the totem pole. But now looking back at all of these, and you have to put your mind at currently where these consoles were at their given time, I think all of them had a really solid launch days, all things considering. Yes, you had a lot more games coming out from that point moving forward in those console generations though, but I don't think any of them truly had like an absolute dog terrible launch, including where we're at with the Switch 2, how people kind of getting like a little bit remorseful and like, well, shoot, is this launch really good with Mario Kart World and Welcome Tour? I mean, it's still solid. Like, let's keep it $1.50. Everybody and their mama, or at least the casual fans, are gonna love the heck out of Mario Kart World though. But if I were to choose out of this whole entire list right here, what was my best launch day games with all of these different consoles, whew, that's a tough one. That's a tough one even for me. For me personally, I think the Nintendo Switch was probably the best one. The N64 comes awfully close. Yeah, and the Wii right behind it. I think those are my 3. N64, the Wii, and the Switch. I think those are my personal top 3. Because, man, those are some incredible games. Mario Kart 64. But then you had, like, Wii Sports carrying it heavily. I remember all those social interactions that I had with family and friends alike. But then Breath of the Wild was just a breath of fresh air. Like, oh, shoot, though. But, yeah, y'all got to let me know down in the comment section down below what all did you think about all these different launch day games that we managed to get from Nintendo, at least in their home console division, for all of these different generations. Which one was your top 3, or what was actually your number 1? I'm kind of curious to see that down in the comment section down below. But that's gonna basically do it in terms of today's video though. So if you really like this, make sure you're gonna hit that like button, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and that bell to stay up to date on all things video game related I feel like talking about and discussing those. So remember y'all, until our video I make next, see y'all.